The best advice I've heard is even if you're 100% certain this is your grandchild calling you saying they're in prison and they need, the lawyer says they need $7,000 immediately because they've crashed into a pregnant woman. This seems to be the script that Glenn and I keep hearing in these stories, is to pause. So take a breath and then try and contact that grandchild. And if you can't contact the grandchild who's allegedly calling you, start contacting your family members and possibly their contacts to see if they can get in touch. But never assume that the person who is asking you to urgently send or wire money or send money in any way is actually your grandchild.
Hello, and welcome to Not Born Yesterday, a podcast dedicated to older adults and the challenges and joys of aging. I'm Miriam Goodman.
Not Born Yesterday is brought to you by Next Village SF, a nonprofit providing older adults in San Francisco with support to help age in place. Also by the Fromm Institute for Lifelong Learning and Shannon Greavy of A Bigger Room. I'm your co-host, Lynn Winter-Gross.
Today on Not Born Yesterday, we're talking about artificial intelligence, or what you may know as AI. Now, don't say, oh no, that's too technical for me, I don't want to listen to this, because AI really can bring positive opportunities to our lives. But like any technology, there is a potential for it to be used maliciously. In fact, in today's news, the first story on the morning news was that the United States has said that $10 billion of American money has been lost to scams. Cyber criminals are using their efforts in increasingly convincing ways, especially when dealing with older adults.
Our guests today are going to help us understand how AI scams became so prevalent and how older adults particularly have been victimized. Shawna Reeves has worked in the field of elder justice for almost 20 years. She is currently the Special Projects Consultant at Legal Aid Assistance for Seniors in Oakland. Prior to that, she was the Director of Elder Abuse Prevention at the Institute on Aging in San Francisco. Glen Fishman is Senior Program Specialist at the Elder Abuse Prevention Program at the Institute on Aging. Glen and his colleagues provide consultation to San Francisco's elder and dependent adult abuse victims, as well as to community advocates and professionals.
Shawna and Glen, welcome to Not Born Yesterday.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
So obviously, this isn't the first time people have feared the rise of unfamiliar technology. I was thinking about the Y2K. Everybody thought the world was going to end when 1999 became 2000. So why are so many of us afraid of AI?
I think we're concerned, and in the profession Shawna and I work in, is that these scammers are using AI to make these scams more harder to detect. And also the red flags that we would tell people to be aware of for scams are kind of becoming obsolete, unfortunately. I tell people that you need to think twice before clicking on a suspicious email or text. And now with AI, I'm telling people you have to think 3 times before doing that.
I agree with Glenn, and I'll say, Miriam, I'm one of those AI anxious people. This is helping me work through that anxiety. I agree, the old advice we gave just doesn't help. I remember, the grandparent scam that we'll probably discuss, or you've had discussed on previous programs. It used to be, don't assume that the person who's calling you is actually your grandchild. But now with AI, it is your grandchild calling you. It's an AI generated voice, but it is for people who answer these calls, they're hearing their grandchild. So we're having to really revamp our advice and really think more creatively about prevention.
That's interesting that you say that, because when my real grandchild does call about something real, I'm never sure it's my real grandchild.
Oh, that's so tragic.
Can you talk about what AI scams really are? We used to get fake emails and understood that, and fake telephone calls, but are artificial intelligence scams something different?
They're not necessarily different. They're basically the same scams being perpetrated, but using this technology, like voice cloning, where you only need 30 seconds of someone's recorded voice to then type in text and have that voice read it out. That's being more popular and easy to use. And if you think about it, something Shawna and I talked about yesterday is the four of us being recording right now for a half hour or so. People are going to have that. They're going to have a sample of our voices. So we're all susceptible, unfortunately.
Glenn, you talked about voice scams and you talked about how we're talking today for 20 minutes. So that kind of freaks me out that after this, somebody could take my voice and do what with it? And how do they do that?
You can purchase these voice cloning apps online. Some of them are free. All they need is a 30-second clip of your voice, and they can then create the situation where they can type in words like a script, which will then be read in the cloned voice.
Lynn, it's you're going to get a text maybe or phone call, voicemail from me saying, "It's Glenn. I have a great investment opportunity for you," and it's going to sound like it's me giving you that information. I think getting back to the sort of top scams to be aware of that are being enhanced by AI is the romance family emergency. Because not only can they use voice, but we used to tell people, well, what's a red flag is if they're not willing to do a FaceTime chat or video chat. Well, now they could do that with face recognition software. Investment scams are on the rise because of AI as well, I think, using that. They make these deep fake videos. It looks like a professional looking CEO hawking their wares on these videos, as well as fake investors are saying they have these great softwares that can tell you predict sales and stock market prices and things.
So if somebody has cloned our voice, for example, how can the listener check to be sure if it's real or not?
That's where our strategies are swiftly changing. So the best advice I've heard is even if you're 100% certain this is your grandchild, for example, calling you saying they're in prison and they need, the lawyer says they need $7,000 immediately because they've scratched into a pregnant woman. This seems to be the script that Glenn and I keep hearing in these stories, is to pause. So take a breath and then try and contact that grandchild. And if you can't contact the grandchild who's allegedly calling you, start contacting your family members and possibly their contacts to see if they can get in touch. But never assume that the person who is asking you to urgently send or wire money or send money in any way is actually your grandchild. And Glenn also talked to me about the idea of a safe word. Glenn, do you want to talk about that? Security?
Sure. It's sort of tried and true. It's very low tech. The family come up with a safe word to use. Don't post it online. Keep it amongst yourselves, and you can ask that person who's calling you, what's our family password? Now, I understand, these scammers are contacting you. They have great background and emotional behavior and stuff. So you're panicking. You might not think to do that, but if you can, just try to take a breath and ask that question.
Yeah, a great suggestion. I heard there was recently a 60 Minutes on these types of scams, and there's a woman named Rachel Toback who is an ethical hacker, and she said that you should practice paranoid politeness, or what did she say? Be politely paranoid, either way, and just never assume that the call you're receiving is from the actual person.
We've talked to a number of people who've been scammed, and I talked to a very bright professional man yesterday who told me how he got pulled in, and he was so embarrassed to tell me how it happened. And we kept saying, how could you go to the bank? How could you? They just got me at an emotional level. And I went to I sent coupons to this person, and I just spent all this money. And we were all saying, how could you have, you're so smart. How does this happen to people?
And it's nothing to do with smarts.
Just getting back to that reminds me, one red flag that's kind of tried and true to keep in mind is if you're being asked the urgency issue, if it's urgent, if they want you to pay by gift card or wire transfer, those are tried and true red flags.
And more we're hearing about couriers. So people actually coming physically to your home and picking up cash, which is frightening on many levels. But yeah, couriers in addition to the wires and the gift cards.
So are there any laws to protect people from getting scammed? I know you can't get your money back most of the time, but any kind of a scam is what happens to the victims? Because no, it seems so many people don't want to report it. But if they knew there was protection, maybe they would.
Well, I could start with mentioning that there was the U.S. Senate Special Committee on Aging 2 months ago held a wonderful hearing. I would never imagine that I would be sitting and listening to a Senate committee hearing for 2 hours twice. But they're making advancements. I mean, the title was "Modern Scams: How Scammers Are Using Artificial Intelligence and How We Can Fight Back." There was a lawyer testifying that had that son in an accident scam perpetrated to him. There was all sorts of people. But they also did talk about having some laws in place, working on getting laws in place, and having things called like watermarks on certain materials that can prove that it's real or not. So they're racing to catch up to the scammers, unfortunately.
I want to talk a little bit about scams that might not necessarily have to do with AI. I was reading that a lot of people like to do quizzes that they see online, and that the people who put up the quizzes are really there to get information about you. For example, if they say, what's the name of your dog? That might be your password for one of your accounts. And they're learning these things, and that we shouldn't even take these quizzes, even if they're fun online. And I think there must be other things like that, that people, when we talk about being sucked into it, you think, oh, well, this isn't hurting me. I'm just filling out, a form for a quiz, or I might win this free trip someplace. And, they're just asking me for my social security number. Of course, if I win, they have to have that. So, how do we fight any of these things? It's like this paranoia that Sean is talking about might be the new way of life.
In terms of the games and the quizzes on Facebook, I know, well, I'm familiar with the Facebook ones. There've been warnings put out every once in a while, you really don't do these. And I know Miriam, you said that those weren't AI scams, but they're actually very related to AI scams, because the more you put information into a program like that, your dog's name, where you went to school, your favorite color, those can be fed into a program that then learns about you and can be used to scam you later through artificial intelligence. Or it could be used, the old-fashioned way. Someone's studying a document and then calling you, but more likely it's being fed into a program that then is creating like a dossier, like figuring out more about you so that they can more accurately target you.
Besides the grandchild calling, what are some other ones that specifically target older adults?
The highest dollar loss is seen with tech support scams, and those aren't just targeting older adults, they target all age groups, but because older adults tend to have more difficulty with technology, they tend to be the ones that are victimized more often. And tech support scams kind of run the gamut, but that's a scam that frequently harms older adults. It's basically like, call this number. Sometimes you call a phone number, sometimes you click on a link that then can potentially install malware on your computer, which then can lock your computer. And then this is where it's difficult, because it's not just one scam, right? Sometimes they can ask for money to unlock your computer, or they can ask for your banking information. They can try and sell you overpriced products and then, just use your information to steal your identity. It can go all manner of ways, but those are the scams where older adults seem to lose the most money at this point, according to the research. So that's one that I feel like we should probably focus on a lot more than I've seen. And then I think romance scams come right after that.
Right. I like to remind people that every age group can fall for all of these scams.
And I think we need to warn people about the one that they think it's from Microsoft, or they say, oh, we've got to fix this. And then the next thing you know, all your money's been taken out of your bank account. Because I know somebody that happened to. So
yeah,
a smart person, of course,
There's also big banking scams. So people might be told, that your account was hacked overnight, and this is Chase Bank telling you like what you need to do. And then they'll ask the older adult to transfer that money to keep it safe into a new account. And of course, that's the account of the scammer. And what's super tragic about this is the transferring of the money is authorized by the older adult. So when they try and get help from their bank, the bank tells them, you did this. There's very little recourse in cases like that, although there are attorneys taking on those cases and challenging that in court, saying that, banks should have programs in place to detect unusual account activity. An elder in the middle of the night transferring money or wiring money, then they've never done it before, and new accounts spontaneously opening. So that's an interesting wrinkle, that it's squarely on the shoulders of the victim to not do that, their banks, but the banks are at this point saying that those are authorized.
I just gave a presentation yesterday at a senior center, and a woman came up to me and showed me on her phone that email from Citibank saying that there's issues with her account. And in the past we'd look at it and we'd see bad grammar, misspellings, the logo looks pixelated. That looked perfect. I was to detect, again, using AI.
So how do you know if it is the bank?
Don't click on that link, but contact the bank directly.
And also with spoofing, so spoofing on top of AI, spoofing is where a scammer can make it look like they are calling from your bank. So on your phone, it'll actually say Chase Bank. The email will have a very convincing email domain name. And so you need to be careful with that as well. But yeah, I guess, hanging up and calling your bank directly is always the safest choice, and never responding to an email that looks like it's from your financial institution. I don't think technology will save us completely. I think it's a three-prong approach that we're looking at: better regulations, education that's updated and works, and then tech solutions.
Any final advice for older adults before I go hide under the bed?
I know, be paranoid, but don't let it ruin your life.
Right.
Easier said than done.
And I do have some hotlines that people can call if they suspect they're being abused. The Senate committee that I mentioned earlier has one. It's aging.senate.gov. You can find a way to report suspicious activity. The phone number is 855-303-9470. I like the National Elder Fraud Hotline because what they do is they assign you a case manager in your area, which is rare. So that's a really good one, and they'll hand walk you through the process of reporting it. I mentioned FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, or we know it as, it's ic3.gov is the website. What's nice about them is they combine the data from nationally and then do searches on words. And I've heard great results happen where certain names keep popping up, or certain phrases, and they can help figure out who these scammers are that way. And then the Federal Trade Commission, which is reportfraud.ftc.gov. And I realize with these things, it's putting the onus on the victim. It's making them kind of relive the experience, which is unpleasant. But I try to appear to their altruistic sense, and you're helping other people the more we report this.
That's a great idea, really helpful. And I want to thank you both for your explanations and discussions of AI. Our guests today were Shawna Reeves and Glen Fishman.
Today on News You Can Use, many of us might be thinking about our taxes, when to prepare them and when to pay them. As you're finishing your tax return, consider the document as a record of your financial situation. You can see what you earned and what you spent, and think about how you might do things differently in the years ahead. And now that you have a pretty good idea of your monetary status, use that knowledge to write your will. We have mentioned this before, but getting that will written is your next financial priority. If you don't have a lawyer or don't want to use one, consider online resources for help in creating a legal will. Problems and complications can arise if you do not have a will, so stop putting it off and make a will.
You may be surprised to learn that more than 50% of Americans don't have a will, and most of us would rather do almost anything except write that one. The founder of Rocket Law did a survey and found that the number one reason people give for not writing a will is that they don't think they need one. But if you have someone you care about in your life and that you want to protect, and any assets at all, you need a will. Luckily, it's not too hard to write one. You can consult with a lawyer, a financial planner, or even write out one in your own handwriting. But if you choose to write your own will online, you can get it witnessed, scanned, or photographed and know that it has been done properly. And if your estate is a bit more complicated, or you have assets that you want divided, or have had several marriages or children, having a lawyer is a good idea.
So why write a will? Because you want your property distributed according to your wishes after your death. You want to be specific about the people or organizations that will or will not receive your property after your death. You'd like to list the person who will carry out the terms of the will. And because you've probably used your computer for certain documents, be sure certain people can access your digital assets, such as email accounts, online backup services, and other accounts or digital property.
Mental competence is important in making sure your will is legally binding. Being mentally competent means that you know you are executing a last will and that you're familiar with your property and your family. Witnesses are required to sign your last will, and they can be asked to validate your mental well-being. Check with your state, as some require the will to be notarized as well. And don't forget charities. Leaving a bequest to one or more charities can help provide important services and benefits to your community and to promote values that are important to you. So consider this when writing your will.
So now you know how necessary a will is. Get a form online or contact a lawyer or sit down and do it. And think of it as a positive move, not a depressing one.
And that's our podcast for today. Our thanks go to our guests, Glen Fishman and Shawna Reeves. You can learn more about Next Village SF at their website, nextvillagesf.org. For more information on the Fromm Institutes of Lifelong Learning, visit fromminstitute.org. Our theme music is from Hook Sounds, and Jason Dahlstedt is our engineer. Shannon Greavy of A Bigger Room is our social media consultant. And thank you for listening. We'd love to hear what you would like us to discover and discuss. Please contact us at notbornyesterdaypodcast.org and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And please subscribe wherever you listen to the podcast. All of these are free and help us to know our audience better. Be well, stay strong, and remember, you weren't born yesterday. I'm Lynn Winter Gross.
And I'm Miriam Goodman.